The Bratislava Detour, why Modi's Slovakia visit signals India's quiet pivot in European defense. That single number resets the tech playbook. The key question is not what happened, but what changes next for operators and users. We will map trigger, incentive shift, and downstream impact before the close. Slovakia's economy ranks 61st globally, smaller than Bangladesh. No tech unicorns. No rare earth deposits. No diaspora. Yet Modi spent June 17 and 18 in Bratislava before his marquee Paris engagements, meeting PM Robert Fico and visiting a Jaguar Land Rover plant. Here's what nobody's talking about: Slovakia manufactures 40% of Europe's infantry fighting vehicles. It houses Konstrukta Defense, maker of the Zuzana II self-propelled howitzer used in Ukraine. And critically, Slovakia's defense contractors operate outside the strict export control frameworks that bind France, Germany, and the UK. India's defense modernization budget hits $130 billion through 2030. The problem is real. Western Europe offers finished systems with minimal tech transfer. Russia is consumed by Ukraine. China is off the table entirely. Slovakia, and the broader Visegrad 4, represents what you might call the Goldilocks tier. Sophisticated enough for dual-use technology. Desperate enough for export revenue to negotiate genuine co-production deals. The timing crystallizes the strategy. 3 data points from a 72-hour window: France announced $6.2 billion in Rafale maintenance contracts on June 18, but these are sustainment deals, not new platforms. India already operates 36 Rafales. France won't release source codes or let India's how manufacture critical avionics domestically. The Real ask, naval jet engine technology for India's indigenous carrier aircraft, remains stonewalled by saffron. Then Slovakia's Konstrukta won a $380 million Indian Army tender to upgrade 500 BMP-2 infantry fighting vehicles with Slovak fire control systems. Announced June 16. 2 days before Modi's arrival. That wasn't coincidence. That was the opening bid made public to justify the visit. Add one more layer: the EU passed new dual-use export restrictions on June 14, tightening controls on semiconductor manufacturing equipment and AI-capable drone components to non-NATO countries. India, despite Quad membership, isn't NATO. Slovakia, as an EU member, is technically bound by these rules but has historically interpreted them, creatively. The regulatory arbitrage is the entire strategy. Connect the dots. Modi went to Paris for the optics and fighter jet service contracts. He went to Bratislava for the machine tools, vehicle electronics, and artillery fire control systems that Slovakia can export without triggering Brussels' compliance apparatus, at least not immediately. This isn't new. Between 2014 and 2022, Slovakia exported $1.8 billion in civilian vehicle components to Turkey, which integrated them into Bayraktar drones and armored personnel carriers. The EU lodged complaints. Slovakia paid fines totaling $40 million. That's a 2.2% transaction cost on an $1.8 billion revenue stream. For India, the calculus is even cleaner. The Make in India Defence Initiative requires 70% domestic content for military procurement by 2028. But domestic content is malleable when you're importing CNC machining centers from ZTS Martin, a Slovak precision toolmaker, to manufacture components in Uttar Pradesh. The transmission is Indian-made. The tooling, jigs, and CAD files came from Bratislava. 3 concrete outcomes are likely in the next 18 months. First, a joint venture announcement by Q3 2026 between Bharat Forge and Konstrukta Defense to produce 155mm artillery barrels in Pune. Slovakia supplies metallurgy expertise and heat treatment technology. India provides scale manufacturing and a guaranteed $2 billion domestic order book. Second, Slovakia becomes India's Central European semiconductor assembly hub by mid-2027. India's chip fabrication ambitions, that $10 billion incentive program announced in 2021, have stalled on lithography equipment export controls. Slovakia can legally sell India back-end packaging and testing equipment that falls into a regulatory gray zone. Watch for Tata Electronics or Adani to announce a technical collaboration center in Košice. Third, Poland and Czech Republic follow the template by Q1 2027. Poland's PGZ already produces reactive armor and operates 240-plus Rosomak armored personnel carriers. India could reverse engineer. Czech Republic's Aero Vodokity could partner on India's struggling AMCA program, not for airframe technology, but for composite manufacturing processes that don't trigger intellectual property restrictions the way a Lockheed Martin joint venture would. Here's the risk Europe isn't pricing. Brussels tolerates this now because Central Europe needs export markets and India isn't yet rearming for confrontation with a NATO member. That calculus breaks the moment India uses Slovak-sourced technology in a border clash with Pakistan, a nuclear-armed state with Turkish drones, Chinese missiles, and a habit of attracting international attention. The second-order risk is China. If India can access European defense technology through the Bratislava backdoor, so can Turkey, already happening, so can Saudi Arabia, in negotiation, and eventually, Chinese shell companies operating through Serbian or Hungarian intermediaries. The EU's dual-use export regime only works if small member states enforce it. Slovakia's $115 billion economy can't turn down $5 to $8 billion in annual defense exports for regulatory purity. Now contrast this with US-India defense ties. The Pentagon offered India co-production on GE F404 jet engines in 2023. 2 years later, the deal remains unsigned because GE won't transfer single crystal turbine blade manufacturing technology, the crown jewel. Meanwhile, Slovakia's Pavaz Strojarn can sell India the vacuum arc remelting furnaces and directional solidification equipment needed to develop that capability independently. It's slower, messier, but it's sovereign. This is the strategic wedge. The US wants India as a quad partner and counterweight to China, but only if India buys American platforms with American dependency built in. India wants the industrial base, not just the weapons. Central Europe is the compromised geography that gives India the tooling without the strategic strings. What does this mean for the next 18 months? Expect announcements of 3 to 5 joint ventures between Indian defense manufacturers and Central European firms. Expect India's defense procurement to shift incrementally away from Russian spare parts toward Slovak-sourced components. Expect the EU to issue formal complaints, followed by negotiated settlements that look like fines but function as licensing fees. The broader implication, Modi's Slovakia visit isn't a diplomatic curiosity. It's the blueprint for how middle powers acquire defense manufacturing capacity in an era of tightening export controls. By cultivating smaller European partners with advanced industrial bases and flexible regulatory interpretations, India is building a sovereign defense supply chain that Western allies won't provide and Russia can't anymore. If this works, expect Brazil, Indonesia, and Saudi Arabia to follow the template. The era of neat alliance blocks controlling military technology diffusion is ending. The era of industrial arbitrage through second-tier partners is beginning. Slovakia just became the test case. This is worth watching closely.